much better. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Coral, and I'm the Curator of Education and Public Engagement here at MOCAD. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon for a talk with these three fabulous artists who are included in our Deep Space Residency exhibition, which is on view right now through today. So you're here in time to catch it one more time before it closes. I'm really pleased to introduce to you Anthony Geathers. Anthony was born in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, New York on, I'm not going to tell him your birthday, April 15th. Geathers discovered photography in the 7th grade, and he studied photography in high school at the High School of Graphic Communication Arts. He served in the Marine Corps, doing 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan as a machine gunner. Holy cats. Geathers left the Marine Corps in August of 2012. He attended the School of Visual Arts and then graduated with a BFA in photography and video. He currently photographs sports, athletes, and does portraiture work. Michelle Keim, she told me to remember her name because it's Keim time, which I love, was born in Millersburg, Ohio. She has a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Columbus College of Art and Design and a Master of Fine Art from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She has been a landscape photographer, a fight photographer, and she is currently a social media photographer for XFO and MMA and Fightland, which is part of Vice News and the Chicago Sun-Times, too.
Can I add one thing?
Please do.
Just recently became the official photographer for the Chicago Golden Gloves.
For the
yeah, boxing tournament.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Great. Yay.
Thank you.
Right on. She's represented by Catherine Edelman Gallery in Chicago, which that news will be really important to you after you hear this talk. I want one. Dana Hoey is a visual artist working with photography. She's been using the camera to reveal the inner life of women. For more than 20 years, she's explored what it means to be a female by investigating women's social roles and relationships, using both highly staged dramatizations and reenactments documented through photography and video. Dana exhibited and taught. She's done that since 1996. She received a Bachelor of Art in Philosophy from Wesleyan University and a Master of Fine Art from Yale University. She's represented by Petzl Gallery in New York, and has presented solo museum exhibitions at the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, D.C., the Center for Art, Design, and Visual Culture at the University of Maryland, and the University Art Museum at the University of Albany, New York. She recently had a large video installation called Fighters, which was part of photography in the expanded field at MassMoCA in North Adams, Massachusetts. She was a professor at Columbia School of Art and is currently visiting artist at the Cooper Union, New York City, and Bard College MFA program. She lives and works in upstate New York, and she's a lovely person, and we are so happy to have her here today. Please join me in welcoming these terrific artists to MOCAD.
Hello. So I'm Dana Hoey. And I'll just briefly tell you it was super exciting to be invited to do the Deep Space Residency. I have been interested in fighting as a sort of social phenomenon for the entire time that I've been making art, and I would get non-fighters to fight, I would get fighters to fight. I've never really worked with pro fighters, but the language of fighting and how it applies particularly to female behavior is quite interesting to me, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we quickly look at my pictures. But the reason for the residency was, since I trained myself, I understood that a particular fight form, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, teaches one type of violent action, which is chokes. And then when Mr. Eric Garner was killed on Staten Island, murdered by a policeman in an illegal choke, I thought it would be really nice to be able to teach defense against chokes in a formal context. Like that to me would be, I'm really interested in practical art, not theoretical. I don't mind if it's theoretical, I'm a philosophy person too, but I'm really interested in things being really actually working in a political way. So this was an exciting opportunity of a lifetime to be able to do that here. So, and then in doing that, we were inviting Detroit Police Athletic League girls to come here and train, and it was My photographs are not so much directly about fighters, so I found these two incredible artists who, for part of their work, also work documenting fight photography, which is a really, in my opinion, incredibly difficult skill. You'll see their work, and they work in other ways too. So they were both gracious enough to put their work up so that when the girls came in to learn this self-defense class, they could see Clarissa Shields, the majesty of Clarissa Shields, her first pro fight, and the incredible athlete Felice Herrig. Her personality, her muscles, her crazy training. So it was a way to make, just flat out inspire people. So that's the nature of the overall residency. That's why it's called 5 Rings. And then I'll just go through my work. This is me getting 2 strangers to fight down by the World Trade Center before I was gone. I moved to New York City as a country girl. I didn't get what was going on between women. I grew up with brothers. I didn't get passive aggression. I didn't get I like your shirt means I hate your shirt. I just didn't get a lot of stuff. So I developed this fantasy, what if women fought openly? What would that do? The way that my brothers did, the way that I did. What would that do for our place in the world, in business, how to be direct? And this is very probably specific to a middle-class white girl. Not everybody has this point of view, but it's how I was brought up. So I started staging cat fights. These are all fake pictures. Another reason why I need people who have the skills to shoot directly, because that's I can say another highly developed art form. Can you not hear me? Oh, it's an accessory. It's a special accessory. So I'm not gonna do the long lecture because I want to hear from these guys, but I'll tell you a few things. When I stage my pictures, they're fictional pictures, but from my point of view, I get people to have conflicts because it brings out their actual emotional reality. So these two were both in this horribly competitive grad school with me, which is Yale, and I knew they weren't going to like each other because they were from very different parts of the world and class and stuff. And it turns out that one of them kicked the other one behind the other one's back while I was taking the picture, so that I actually brought out a latent conflict that was there. This is the kind of experiment that I was interested in. It's just social discomfort at Yale. Whether you're going to be sexy or whether you're going to look smart. These are high school students on the Big Island of Hawaii. I asked them who would be in charge, and they all said the blonde girl. And so that's what the picture shows. This is all 90s color work. This is from a book project I did called Profane Waste, about throwing away valuable things. So this is a pregnant smoker. The 90s was a lot about sort of identity questions, and it became very abstract, so it became more focused on money, pay scale. This was actually Photoshop existed when I did this picture, stupidly, so I could have faked burning the $100 bill, but it was for a book, so it was worth it in the end, but it was a little insane. This is a champagne bath, all again for this book, Profane Waste. It's the first digital work I did. It's the first sort of commissioned work, and it's a collaboration with the writer Gretchen Rubin. In the 90s, there was a lot of discussion about fact versus fiction, and I was a fictional artist, and I was surrounded by a lot of so-called non-fiction artists. I think the issue has exploded now with digital photography. Whether you trust journalism or not is sort of an issue. It's already been thought through, but at the time it was just beginning to be a question, so I wanted to make a show of both non-fictional and fictional pictures, so I brought my 2 friends to the West to look for a man, which is my actual brother, non-fiction, but the scenario of looking for them was fictional. And because I'm philosophically driven, it was about certain pictures will look more cinematic and certain pictures will look more documentary. So the fictional ones look more cinematic, this is fake. This is a cowboy who acts as a cowboy in a show, doing his show for my pretty girlfriends. So we looked for iconic male figures and we found them, they just weren't real. And I'm a ruthless director. To get this person unhappy, I smashed her sunglasses because she was too smiley. So, I'm a nice person otherwise, but fiction is hard to do authentically. So what happened with that show is I didn't find my actual brother. He's AWOL, but I did find his kid, so that's who's in the tree right there. And then it was shown sort of MoMA style, black frame, small prints, but this was a billboard on the other side. Was this making a bad sound? This is a giant mural of a prison at night, which is most likely the location for my brother. It's odd doing this the abbreviated version. I can tell my at the end of the 90s, I was grouped in with a lot of sort of Yale girl photographers, and it was the attack was leveled that we were being shown because we were pretty, which fine. I'm like, give me if you think I'm pretty, give me a show. Fine, you know, I'll take it. But I like to think that I was given shows because I have some brains and some talent. But I understand the objection, especially now that I'm older. I understand the objection more. But I started making kind of grouchy work about, like, oh, you think this work is all about making basically pornography with my friends? Okay, let me see if I can do that. So I made a mud wrestling video with an older woman beating up younger women. And to me, she was older, now she's younger than me, but this is a still from it. So my work reacts to the social conditions that it's around. Like I had a big phenomenon, people consume my work as girls, and then I made work about the act of being consumed. And this is still also my reaction to being a Yale girl phase. These are collages. These are, again, I think only me and Petzel, who has a really twisted sense of humor. When you make feminist work, people don't expect you to have a sense of humor, but a German dealer can understand the embarrassment factor in these collages. And I'm earnest as a feminist, but I also understand that people look down on feminist work, so I figured the most crafty work that I could make would be what people would want to mock as feminist work, so that I made quilt work to invite mockery, and I made it as big and harsh as I could. And so Petzel's like, oh, I can't sell those, but I'll show them. And it's been the most long, and I don't think I sold them, but they've been in so many group shows, and they were it was right 2000, before there was a lot of collage, so all the kids wanted to borrow them for the group shows. So that to me is maybe plenty happy. And they're massive. They go on the wall like that. What's my time situation? So like 5-10 minutes, 5 more minutes? 10. Okay, so this is, I moved upstate after 9/11. This is something called Double Take. It's an homage to a Nash covered sculpture. For this show, I imagined what the world would be like if there was a terrible event, as there just had been in my city, and nothing was left, there was no infrastructure, and the people that took over were all female. So there was no mostly male police force, there was no male president, it was all going to be female. Sort of an homage to the Joanna Russ science fiction novel called The Female Man. So it was organized in groups of pictures. So this is the group of pictures for the ash after a fall, which of course literally happened in the city, but also sort of, I grew up fearing the big bomb and the ash after. So. And the ash covers the sun, so it freezes, so we would advance to another room in the show. One line of thinking is that since the kind of underclass of females have been awarded the crappy jobs of doing detail work, we would be most likely to survive because you need detail work in a survival situation. And so this is called the president, you know. After it freezes, it thaws. It's unclear how safe it will be after it thaws. That's the chief of police in my mind. Art's great. You can imagine anything you want, you know. This is the chief of police in my mind. She's 94. This is each section of this show had a practical object in it, because I wanted, it's the beginning of my interest in artwork actually being practical rather than sort of generally Marxist or generally theoretical. So this is a wind-up radio that you might want to have should your entire life disappear. If you want to survive, you need to be more female. It's called The Female Man. If you want to light a fire, you dig a hole so that people can't see you from far away. Okay. Oh, I didn't make a transition picture. Okay, so this is, before the show, there's a lot of abstract photography, and I teach, so I'm quite in touch with what people are interested in, and a lot of people are more interested in sort of the medium photography and taking the image out and making materials-driven work. That's not my interest, although I think from a distance perspective on how photography works as a phenomenon, I do use images, so I wanted to step away one step and make representations of representations. So these are tape models of my poor suffering students at Columbia. You like cover the person with duct tape inside out, and then, yeah, it's really intense. This show is called The Phantom Sex. And representations of women, I've been a little touchy about that, like to be consumed or not, so it's about sort of giving and receiving the sort of erotic beauty of the female form. Maybe you can have it, maybe you can't. It's back and forth with naturalism versus ideal forms. Finally, my first real fighters. This is a family that is a martial arts family. And I started training with the man there, and that's his mom. And I started doing motion studies. This is my backyard. Mom is tough. So that was shown in a museum upstate. It's like a small museum upstate. It's awesome, and it's like a more style motion study of how to hit someone, basically. So it's the beginning of the how-to. And then this is still from just the making of the fighters video, which is in the other room. If you haven't seen it, there are a number. Mostly I work in video at the moment because in studying motion, it's made more sense to work with motion. So this is just someone took over my shoulder shooting. I'm not going to show you those videos. They're available. Someone took over my shoulder of the sparring of the kind of older butch woman against the younger femme women. Yeah, I can play that. So I'll just close with the portraits that you see in chiffon. They're about to be turned into flags and driven around in a super painted up queer-tastic truck in Tampa, Florida, and they'll be made into sort of not Confederate flags. They'll be very feminine fighter chiffon flags and driven around town, so that's like the best life for them. And then they'll be shown as tattered flags. Nice. All right. It's time to hear from Michelle. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, I'm Michelle Keim. First of all, I want to say hats off to Dana for putting together a show about combat sports in an art museum. When I started making photographs of a mixed martial artist, coming from a fine art background, I had just assumed that this would be unpalatable to the fine art audience, and I may have hoped to show it in the museum one day, but coming from being in art school, it wasn't exactly full of sports fanatics and enthusiasts. Maybe Anthony can attest to, as a sports type himself who went to art school. It was kind of, I spent most of my life as a bad at sports art type, right? So thank you, Dana, for seeing merit in my work and including me in this residency. It's a privilege to be here. So I want to talk to you about how this happened. How did I get to the point where I'm photographing this amazing, gorgeous, fabulous creature, Felice Herrig, who is a ranked UFC fighter, and my friend, and a pretty big celebrity. She's got over 1 million followers on her Facebook page. These are images you'll probably recognize from the show. They're right over there. If you don't know what the UFC is, it's like the NFL of the mixed martial arts world. You know, it's on the national platform. It sold for $4 billion last year. The way Felice found herself in the UFC is she competed in a reality show called The Ultimate Fighter, season 20, and she earned a 3-fight contract with the UFC by competing on that show. This is the poster for that show. I like how fancy they made those girls for the show. Look at them with their lipstick on. Kind of impractical. So that's how Felice, a little background about how she got into the UFC. I want to talk to you about how I got there. Now, Amy gave away the surprise a little bit in my introduction because I started as a landscape photographer. For 20 years, I photographed the industrial landscape. I moved to Chicago to be near Gary, Indiana. And I started photographing the industrial landscape because probably I grew up on a farm and there were only hills and cows. And so the industrial landscape was just completely fascinating. It was like the mothership to me. It might as well have been from outer space. So it started as a fascination, but you know, when I was in art school, I figured out that there was a dichotomy that I was really drawn to, and that's this tension between the beautiful and the horrible. You know, like you can admire some of these places. The way you can look at a storm rolling in over Lake Michigan and be in awe of its, like, in the true sense of the word, the awesome beauty of something like that, but at the same time understand that you don't know what's going to come out of that storm. It could wipe out your entire neighborhood, and that's the kind of beauty that I was seeing in these places. You know, there's all this potential for destruction, whether little by little chipping away at the environment. We all know that's happening, or maybe a Fukushima-style disaster is inside of these places too. And that's what I was looking for. By photographing them at night, that really did two things. It, all of the mundane details that I wasn't interested in just kind of melted into the shadows. And it also made them kind of extra beautiful and extra ominous. So this work did pretty well. I got gallery representation right out of grad school. I got a show at the Chicago Cultural Center. I was given grants. 2006, I published with Nazrieli Press. That is what's supposed to happen if things are going well. And after this, you're supposed to follow this body of work with another body of work. And that's supposed to lead to international museum shows and world fame. And I did follow this with another body of work. It's called Metrosphere, and it's where I was looking at the industrial sky, the urban sky as an industrial landscape. My dealer didn't like this work. She said it was too similar to what I had already done. These are all industrially produced steam clouds that you're looking at. And this work just kind of stalled for me. It kind of didn't really seem to work. And that was really painful for me. This was a creative crisis for me because my whole identity from the time I was age 6 was that I'm an artist. So here I found myself as an artist who was making no art. Like I had nothing to do. I couldn't do it. This work was hard to make. You know, it took me a year to get into US Steel. And they gave me 3 days, and when I got there, it rained. So it was hard to begin with, just the logistical part of it, you know, sort of the stars had to line up anyway. Add to the fact that I just kept on having babies. And then that was like a whole nother layer of complication, and that kind of sucks a creative force out of you too. So I couldn't make the industrial work anymore. I was at a complete crisis. It's a really awful, crusty, terrible feeling. So meanwhile, back in real life, I weighed 200 pounds and I needed to lose some weight. And I'm sorry, I don't happen to have a photo of myself at 200 pounds to show you. So sorry about that. In this photograph, I had already lost 60 pounds. And I did that by discovering Muay Thai kickboxing. I had never liked sports, but punching people in the face is really fun. I don't know if you've ever tried it. So I joined a gym. I learned how to fight. At first, I really wasn't all that great at it. But I did get a little bit better, good enough so that last year in February I competed at age 44, my first fight against an opponent who was just about half my age, and I won. And that makes me an undefeated fighter, right? Undefeated. Thank you. Then, you know, I've been doing this for 7 years now, so now I actually teach women's sparring every weekend. They let me do that. And it's exhilarating. I love it. So about 3 years into training Muay Thai, it did occur to me that I had become a privileged insider into this really fascinating, mad world of controlled violence. And So I started asking my teammates if I could photograph them, but I need you to understand how difficult that was, because what I had done to myself is I had put myself inside a Ziploc baggie and it was labeled Fine Art Industrial Landscape Photographer, and I zipped it shut, all the way shut. So it was not that easy to jump out of that Ziploc bag and start doing something completely different. Photographing fighters was really, like, just in every way really different from what I was used to doing, but and it felt really confusing. But after a while, I did figure out that, well, even though these are really different subjects, they're really about the same thing. The industrial work was about power and beauty, and, well, this is exactly about power and beauty, for sure. It's about the thrilling and the terrifying happening all at the same time. It's the fear of bodily harm headed your way, and it's about the spectacular. And this work was all about that. So, and it was so fun, I wasn't going to stop anyway. And so I started going to the fights with my teammates. And here's the spectacular, you know, like a glowing power plant in the middle of a cornfield has spectacularity just the way this whole event does. Anyway, eventually I became the social media photographer for XFO, the local cage fighting organization in Chicago. I've been doing that job for 3 years. I love it. These are the kind of photos I make for them. It's so fun. And a lot of the teams, they know me, and so, you know, you get photos like this. Okay, so this is where Felice Herrig comes into it. In this is the little shadow box that hangs in the gym where Felice trains. This is commemorating her very first fight in the UFC. So in that photograph in the middle where she's winning, that very moment where she was winning with an armbar at her UFC debut, I was in a bar in Chicago photographing the weigh-ins for another MMA promotion. And the fight was being broadcast on the TV while I was there, and at that moment when she won, I knew who she was. I didn't know her personally, but nothing happened when she won. Nobody cheered. I was in a bar full of MMA fans, and this is our local girl in the UFC, and nobody made a sound. And it was really disappointing, and I thought, well, if they're not going to throw her a ticker tape parade, then I suppose I could do something about it. I didn't know her personally, but XFO was co-founded by her coach, and I work for XFO, so I got a hold of her coach, who is Jeff Big Frog Kern. Any MMA, are we in a room full of MMA fans here? You've all heard of Jeff Big Frog Kern, right? So that's her coach. I just called him up and asked if I could start hanging out with the team to work on a project. I started going to out-of-state fights with them, photographing them when they're training. This is one of Felice's teammates. Another one of Felice's teammates. And this is one of the first photos I made of Felice. And I told her that she had suffered some bad press from The Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if anybody has seen that, right? You know, she was portrayed poorly. It was edited kind of not in her favor. People really thought she was a bitch, and she suffered from, I'm sorry about the language. She suffered like from that whole situation. You agree with that, right? Yeah. And I told her that I felt like she was a really serious fighter and she deserved to be portrayed that way. And we decided to work together promoting her next fight in the UFC. She allowed me to come in and photograph her training camp. She just wanted to see all the photos before I published anything. That was the only condition. So this was her fight, her training camp, which is, training camp is like maybe 2 months ahead of a fight where there's this period of intense training. So we worked together, and she fought Paige Van Zandt, and she lost. And have you seen this fight? Do you know? You're nodding your head. She lost, and it was, to say it was devastating for her is such an understatement, because she lost a fight that she knew she could win. It was like, I remember when I was overweight, I used to have this dream that I was running away from somebody, but I couldn't move because I was so heavy, right? And I think that's how she felt when she got in the cage. She had these health issues that she hadn't addressed, and when she got in there, she just couldn't move. And so she got beat, and she was devastated. So she was crushed for she took at least a year off before she fought again. So anyway, we had really connected though and become good friends during that training camp. And we just started hanging out together. She doesn't live close to me. She's about an hour and a half away from me. But Felice likes to be photographed. And I like to make photographs. And so that works out pretty well for us. One of the things she does is cosplay. She likes to dress up as superheroes because she looks like a damn superhero anyway. And we run around Chicago and we make photos dressed as superheroes. And it's pretty fun. And she's a very creative person. This is a creative outlet for her. And if you look like that, it really doesn't make sense to like walk around in a frumpy bathrobe. Her body is her job. So if she wants to walk down Michigan Avenue or down a dark alley in her underpants and a cape, I think that's totally fine. She's very charming. This is in a comic book store in their gross, disgusting bathroom, never been cleaned bathroom, and she just sat herself right down there. So what you can't tell from those photographs is that I'm actually dressed as the boy wonder when we're out making these photographs. There you get a little sneak peek of my costume. Right, so hanging out with a celebrity, I've never been friends with a celebrity before. It's pretty fun. It's interesting. I think about what celebrity means quite a lot. You know, she draws crowds, like, and it's fun, but like, you know, if you just want to go to the bathroom, it's not that much fun because it takes a long time to get there because crowds are forming around her. Anyway, so that's just been something interesting. So she got another fight in the UFC, and she just decided to take the bull by the horns. She hired a couple of doctors to figure out what was wrong with her, why she didn't feel right. She stood up to her coaches and said, look, I think I overtrained. And she said no to every social engagement. That's hard. That's maybe one of the hardest things she did, is friends were asking her to go do things and she said, no, I'm in training camp, I'm gonna win, and I just have to do this. So she got really focused. During her second training camp that I photographed, she barely even talked to me when I was there. I was a fly on the wall. She trains hard. Make no mistake, she trains hard. Look at that bicep. Does your liver hurt looking at that? Oh, and okay, so here's this, you know, muscly woman. I think I put this in here just for scale because I think people assume that, you know, you look at her and you think that she's this size, but, you know, for scale, there's me standing next to her. She's teeny. You know, she's all cut up and everything, but she fights at 115 pounds. You know, in this photo, I probably weigh like 140, and she's 115. Well, she's close to 115 in this photo. So that's just for scale. So her next fight was in Chicago, so that's an extra layer of pressure for her, hometown fight. And she had the pressure on her, knowing that, well, if she didn't win this fight, the UFC is probably going to cut her. She put the pressure on herself. She was telling herself, well, if I can't win this fight, I might as well just retire. I just don't have it in me anymore. Here she is in the spotlight, all eyes, all cameras, all pressure right on her. I mean, she's got her team behind her, but she gets in that cage alone with her opponent. And I feel like I could see that pressure even through the Jumbotron. I feel like I could see it on her face. You know, that was a lot for her to shoulder after all that intense training and cutting weight. And so she won her fight in under 2 minutes. And that made a happy Felice. And so in her third training camp, I saw the happiest, healthiest Felice I've ever seen. She figured out a lot about her health and that you don't have to feel like crap when you're training a fight. You know, you can consult some specialists and you can feel really good. And so the most recent training camp, the UFC set her up against an undefeated new fighter out of Mexico, a girl who Felice was not supposed to beat. The girl's 9-0, and Felice stood up and outboxed her, this young boxer from Mexico, and she won that fight too. And so she's in training camp again right now. I don't have any photos of that to show you yet, but just to sum up, I want to say that I photographed Felice a lot. Like, and I don't even know Oh, here's just to prove that it's all authentic. There's the pile of sweat she left. She had just walked out of the sauna and into my little setup and left that nice pile. You know, I don't know why I have photographs of her in her kitchen in her underwear. I don't know why I photograph her cat. This is a little tangent, and I can't explain all of this to you, but this photograph it's the funeral card from when her brother passed away at a very young age, and this is just to say that she's had a really rough life, and some of that involved some really deep grief. You know, I wish I could tell you more, but there's no time. Anyway, I have a lot of, this is Felice with her eyes dilated at the eye doctor. You know, she's making friendship bracelets. I don't know why. You know, so I know I made this because it's for her sponsors, but I'm making all these photos of Felice. Is it because I'm a photojournalist now? Is it because I'm a sports photographer now? Am I still a fine art photographer? I don't know. But I'm just gonna keep doing it. And it's fun, and I'm just gonna see where it goes. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, so name's Anthony from Brooklyn, New York, and I can say I'm a sports photographer. We're just gonna get that out the way. So, but the way I approached shooting sports, was not just by shooting fights, but creating these moments, celebrating these athletes by portraiture, by presenting them as larger-than-life characters, by celebrating them. Especially this photograph. I'll tell you about this individual. His name is Hitchens, and he is the first Olympic boxer to come out of Haiti to represent Haiti in last year's Olympics. I met him in Brooklyn, New York, in East New York, at this gym named Atlas Cops and Kids. And this was the same time I was photographing a couple of pro fighters that trained down there. And he was getting ready for the Olympics, but no one was photographing. One of the big things in New York is you find these athletes that never get this kind of notoriety, or no photographer gives a damn. So I kind of took it upon myself as having a chip on my shoulder to photograph these individuals and to really celebrate and show people this is what New York is producing as far as top talent in relation to either fighting or any other kind of athletics I photograph. This was the photograph that started it all for me in photography. One of the first things I wanted to shoot, aside from fighting, was basketball. So this started everything. We met myself and a friend of mine, we met these kids near a park, near my apartment, and because at the time we was getting ready to do a documentary, and as soon as the kids saw me with the camera, they were showing off on the court, they was doing crossovers, they were shooting, and you know, as I kept shooting, they kept going, and when we got ready to leave, they asked for a group photo. So after making this group photo, it was clear to me what I needed to do. So while going to SVA and dabbling in sports photography, as I got deep, as I went down a rabbit hole, started bringing a bit of portraiture and fine art, and started researching ways to make my photographs different and to make these fighters look different. Because normally, especially with a lot of fighters today in the UFC, you'll see the basic photograph, the 3-light setup, you'll see their entire face, but there's not that much mystery, there's not that much mystique to them, and there's not that much celebration of their hard work. So in my photographs, it's a bit of documentary, it's a bit of celebration, it's a bit of, all right, let me show off what these guys look like. Oh, by the way, these two photos of UFC welterweight Randy Brown. I met him. Well, again, a lot of fighters who are photographed, they all know each other or connected some sort of way. So meet him in Queens in his gym. We just hit it off. We just hit it off great because again, no one was photographing him in his amateur career. So I took it upon myself. All right, we're gonna make this guy look good. We're gonna tell his story. I connected with the story because we both come from nothing. So I'm gonna use my camera to go ahead and tell his story and, you know, make him look good, you know, so he can have something, not only for social media, but down the line when he shows his kid, hey, this is what I've done, you know, this is the legacy I have, and hopefully you're proud of me. And along the way, I start feeding my passion. My passion is photographing, basketball photographing, fighting, photographing pro wrestling. Found this little small promotion in the Bronx, and you know, I was like, all right, if I'm gonna photograph pro wrestling, let me start here, see where it goes, and yeah, we just kind of had fun with this and started telling these stories, and instead of just shooting action, I'm like, let me look for these moments to really put these performers on the pedestal. Because again, especially with pro wrestling, it gets such a bad rap in society. So I'm like, all right, let me take these performers, because I've been a fan of pro wrestling. I'm like, let me take these pro wrestlers and let me create something unique with them. Here's another world-class fighter. They call him Little B-Hop because he fights like Bernard Hopkins. So I take, usually also in my work, what I do is take a lot of the studio lighting that I've learned and put it in commercialized, but yeah, interesting dynamic. Adding both light and shadow and really making these starting out talent seem like they've been around long. They are like these immortal human beings. You know? And some of my work also leads to me going backstage and documenting these guys getting ready to step out into the crowd and perform on a big stage. This is former world champion Chris Algieri, who's getting ready to fight Errol Spence. His comeback in his return fight. Unfortunately, he lost that night. But during that process, he was getting ready. Everything felt good, and on occasion, he's playing to me, shooting him. So kind of gave me this, portrait before he went out there and fought Errol Spence. And here's a picture of this state's beloved daughter, Clarissa Shields. So ESPN runs this, they have this section called The Undefeated. And The Undefeated celebrates basically black culture in sports. So I got the call from their photo editor, Brent Lewis. He asked, hey, do you want to go photograph Clarissa Shields? Usually I'll send like a box, and this is his words, he'll usually send like a box of photography covers, but because most box photographers are not her age or can identify with her, I got the call to go do this. And at the time I was 26. So yeah, we took the first leg of the assignment, went down to Boca Raton, Florida, to photograph her last legs of the training camp. When I got there, of course she was late, because let me tell you something about dealing with athletes. They show up on their time. When they show up, then it's like, all right, now we're on time, now we can work. So, but she showed up around 8, 9 o'clock, so, and I got to Boca Raton at 1, so I just spent time in her gym working out and catching views. When she showed up, we just started working, and this was like one of those assignments where I literally sweated and climbed. Like, this is me. I was like a gnat at a barbecue, just like moving around, trying to make some photos of her and really celebrate her. And she's on the bucket list of athletes I've always wanted to shoot, especially following her career and following her story in Flint, dealing with adversity. And this was my way of celebrating her as a fighter, as a representative for women all over the planet. This was the assignment for me. And then the second leg of the assignment was headed down to the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas to photograph her first pro fight on the Andre Ward versus Kovalev undercard, and she did not disappoint. Unfortunately, this fight was on the prelims. I thought it should at least been the co-main event because the men stuck it up in the co-main event. And her fight with her opponent, Franchon Cruz, they really brought it for 5 rounds. She wound up winning, and this was the photo for me that represented those years of her hard work and representing the United States, bringing home Olympic gold medals. And she went on the big stage, and she looked comfortable. One of my other things I photograph is basketball. So, and besides creating in-game moments, I bring my portraiture in and celebrating these basketball players. Because New York and street ball have this insane marriage since the early 90s. Another guy that I photograph is, his name is David Branch. He's back in the UFC, competing as a middleweight. Before then, in the early 2000s, he competed in the UFC, but he was let go because his style was boring, but he was winning. So he went on to tear the independent promotions, Titan FC, and making his last stop on the independent circuit in the World Series of Fighting, winning both middleweight and light heavyweight tournaments, and becoming MMA's second dual world champion. So I photographed him pretty much my whole college career, from 2012 to even till now. And I've been with him and been documenting almost every camp, and it's been a ride. It's been quite interesting to tell his story. And also photographing him, I brought my portrait game into this, because often, again, a lot of these fighters, they don't have, especially a lot of the unknown fighters, they don't get that notoriety in the sport of mixed martial arts unless you're this big mouth superstar or whatever the case may be. You often get shunned for bringing skill and being that damn good at your job that you go and win tournaments, to win and become MMA's second dual world champion. And this photo was taken at his last fight with World Series of Fighting inside the theater at Madison Square Garden. And what made this assignment unique was the fact that this was his last fight before officially making that jump back to the UFC to go and campaign for the UFC World Middleweight Championship. And the promotion, it was giving him hell. It's making this extremely, they was trying to get in his head so he could lose the fight, and they will have some sort of leverage for him to stay at World Series of Fighting and keep throwing him monsters and trying to dethrone him as their champion. But thankfully he choked him out in the 5th round. And they also gave me a hard time because, I was on the phone with them all week saying, hey, can I be cage side and photograph his fight? So they was giving the whole team trouble. Thankfully, the New York Times picked up on this because I usually post things on social media, and they just picked up on the story and the fact that he's a New Yorker and no one's really heard of him, and we really made it happen on all fronts. And this was a really cool moment to photograph him inside the mecca of sport and entertainment. And This is a photo of him in camp. So I've been with him for this whole entire ride. A lot what goes on in camp is, especially if you look at magazines, newspapers, you don't really get a scope of how these athletes train, how these athletes prepare. You only see when it's time to get on the stage. So I took it upon myself to tell his story on all fronts, whether it's in training camp, whether I'm spending time with his family, or just hanging out, or he's getting ready to go fight. I took it upon myself and was like, look, we're going to build this work, we're going to tell his story, we're going to do it the right way. And so that's what this photograph represents. This actually is a current photo because he's getting ready to fight in the UFC next week as he begins his campaign toward another world title. And every now and again, I go to step out my comfort zone and go shoot something else that I haven't shot before. I actually photographed this game in upstate New York. I attended this workshop called the Eddie Adams Workshop. For those who don't know who Eddie Adams is, he was a war photographer covering mostly the Vietnam War and other conflicts around his career as a photographer. So they had this workshop where they invite 150 of the best photography students, and I got to go as a senior, and we went and shot this football game, and I brought, as a group assignment, I brought what I do with the fighters to game of football, which I'm a fan of also. This photograph is of signed Richard Ross, a former Olympic gold medalist in track and field. This actually was a surprise assignment because this was piggybacking off of who I'll show later in the presentation. I worked for 4 years with this fighter named Angela Hill. She's the first African-American female fighter to compete in the UFC. So piggybacking off that story, and that getting published for ESPNW, they threw this assignment at me as like, hey, you want to work with Sonny Richard Ross? You'll be following her all day. I was like, hell yeah, let's do it, man. So again, this is me taking one thing and then it turned into something completely different. Where not only I'm not just now working with fighters, I'm working with athletes across the board and really creating and really documenting how they live and train as athletes and human beings. This is one of David Branch's training partners and coaches. His name is Gary St. Ledger. He's a U.S. Olympic judoka. With him, we clicked automatically. Like as soon as I got into David's camp, we just clicked in because he lives near me also. So I thought, also with these athletes, I like bringing like the commercial photography aspect. So I like making these interesting portraits of athletes, as you notice throughout my work. No specific portrait is the same or whatever. I like to experiment and play and create trouble. And going right back to street basketball. I go, like in New York, there's not a lot of these parks are like cleaned up, so that's where like a lot of games will be played in these roughed up parks. But it makes it cool because if you're a fan of basketball or you know anything about street ball, this is as gritty as it gets. You get the whole community coming out. You smell marijuana. Everybody's making noise and talking shit. And, they're betting on games. So I like, especially with basketball, I like being around that environment because I feed off of that. And, I even sometimes like put the camera down, just watch and talk shit with the fellas and whatnot. So like whatever I photograph, like I'm passionate about and I enjoy it. And then every now and again, I'll throw in some music photography. This is a photograph I used to do. And then I'll jump right back into photographing these tremendous athletes. This is Jarrell Miller. He's an upcoming heavyweight prospect. Real knockout artist. His story, he's Belizean, although he's born in Brooklyn, but raised in Queens, so he's he's a New Yorker through and through. So I spent about a year photographing him in the New York circuit, tearing it up, knocking these guys' heads off, and telling his story. Because again, with a lot of talent that's in New York, they don't, especially fighters, you don't really get to hear about them or know about them. So I made it my business to like, hey, this is who's out there. These are these guys. Like they're out there. You just gotta. I'm giving people a chance to look. There he is. There's a guy that don't get noticed. I think now, especially now that the heavyweight division is coming back in boxing, with efforts made by Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, you're really going to see guys like Terrell really step up and try to take on the rest of the world in combat sports. This is a photograph of one of the basketball players I've met through social media. Because what happens is as I'm photographing these athletes, they gravitate toward my work. I go like, hey, I want to go photograph. I go just put it out in the universe, and just sometimes it sits on my lap. Sometimes people hear it. It's like, hey, I got a connection for this guy, and he was one of those guys that just fell in my lap. And so after a friend told me about him, I went on YouTube and looked at his high school and college reel, and he drove all the way down to New York. We met, and we just hit it off. We worked with him for a summer, creating these portraits of him, creating game action, and really taking my inspiration, because I love rap, so I take a lot of my inspiration from like album covers and magazines like The Source and Vibe magazine. I really spent the summer making work with him, celebrating who he is. And on occasion, because of what I've done, I sometimes get calls from commercial clients like Adidas to, give them the same thing I've done on my own. So I felt like Wolverine in this case. He's got that little man complex. So photographing him was cool. Although to really get this height, you got to sit on the floor and shoot him and stay there, because he likes to move around a lot too. Also, I like to bring, in my portraits, I like to bring their lives and who they are into my portraiture. This is a portrait of former Bellator MMA world champion Liam McGeary. And his story is actually interesting. He used to be, he used to, get into a lot of trouble in the UK, and he used to, cause a little trouble. So for him, fighting was his way out of that. And before he fought, he was a construction worker. So a lot of his strength and conditioning kind of mimics what he did on the job. So in creating this portrait, I was like, hey, you should, because he was just doing a conditioning workout, mind you, and I was like, this is kind of similar to what you've done in construction. Like, yeah. So I was like, let's celebrate that. Let's put that out there. And I've been with him basically my whole college career too. So and him and David, they're friends. So it was just like, all right, we shoot him. Okay, I'll shoot him too. And they both have held world titles. So they got that lethal weapon dynamic with them. When one is creating trouble, the other one's like piggyback off and vice versa. Going right back to this damn pro wrestling. And really bringing that portrait style to them, and really trying to not only try to create the work that I want to create, but I like telling people about these things that I'm interested in, because I don't want to be selfish and not share that. This is a picture of a Bellator lightweight champion, Michael Chandler, often a lot, especially in New York. Especially now that it's legal, MMA is legal in New York. A lot of these guys come to town, and this is actually a passion project, because myself and the photo director Spike, we often see each other at Henzo Gracie gym New York. So one day he was like, hey, you want to shoot Michael Chandler for the day? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? You know, I followed him around, and he was training, and you know, spent the whole day with him. And he was just amazed. Again, a lot of these athletes, they don't get people making artwork for them, or they'll just get this cookie cutter kind of work. So creating something you can take home and look at, and, you know, put on social media. That's my reward. That these guys have something they can call it on. And oftentimes, if I have the time, I'll make them print it. They're like, should I give you something? Like, no. You take that. You give it to your kids. I want you to have something tangible other than just like digital file. This was a game. This was actually part of the campaign for the Nike Equality campaign. You guys have probably seen it on television and print. And so often my work takes me to these strange places and shooting high school games and really trying to create something visually appealing for people to experience, and give them like a point of view from where I'm shooting at, so they can like follow along and get in there and have this imagination about what's going on. This is Angela Hill. So she was the first fighter I've had the privilege to photograph. Without her, I don't think I would have got to shoot anyone else. And before she went to the UFC, I spent 3 to 4 years photographing the second half of her kickboxing career in New York. And just following her camp and, you know, watching her make that transition from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. So she, without grappling, without wrestling, without jiu-jitsu, because the sport of Muay Thai and kickboxing in general, there's not big payouts, and there's not these big payouts. And she wanted to still fight and make the big bucks. So she took upon herself to go to Vegas to try out for season 20 of the Ultimate Fighter tournament. And she, without any experience, she made the tournament. Fortunately, you know, she took a loss, but she impressed to the point where she had a 3-fight deal in the UFC, and because of her grappling, she took some losses, so she had to go to Invicta and, you know, clean it up. Thankfully, she had quite a great run in Invicta, winning fights, eventually becoming their world strawweight champion, and then she got invited back into the UFC. So for her to come be, and the crazy thing about her too was no one was photographing her as a kickboxer. No one, like they'll go photograph a fight, but no one spent the time with her until I got there. And I started spending time, and then people said, oh, okay, this is who she is, this is what she does, and ESPNW caught on to this, and we wound up sharing my whole archive, and they let her tell her story, and so it was a collaboration for both of us. And the nice thing about her, me and her collaborating, is she's also an artist, comes from Cooper Union, and drawing, so for her to see my vision, and without her compromising who she is, and we brought those talents together to really create something unique for her. And along the way, I put this out in the university. I also wanted to work with rappers, particularly those guys coming from the 90s. So when I got a chance to meet Prodigy from Mobb Deep, we met in Brooklyn, and because he's a clean eater now. A lot of rappers nowadays, their big thing is health, because a lot of times they don't get that at home growing up, that they gotta eat healthy. So, but having the privilege to shoot him was, and although I didn't get paid for this at all, I was like, to hell with that. This is payment enough for me to, you know, be 26, 27 years old, starting to create these portraits of the guys that I grew up listening to, even like from like being happy to like being pissed. He was one of the guys that I grew up listening to. And again, with my portraits, there's celebration. There are ways I can appreciate what these guys do and who they are. This was at UFC's first Brooklyn event at the Barclays Center, and got a chance to watch one of the MMA fighters I grew up watching, Anderson Silva, at damn near 40 years old, fight a young buck, and Derek Brunson. And that was not a good night for Derek Brunson. And the crazy thing is, just as I'm a fan of Anderson Silva, I'm a fan of Derek Brunson because I actually know him through David Brandt. So this was a fight that I was literally on the fence. Like usually if I'm doing work for like this was for Getty, but I took this to heart because I'm a fan of Anderson and I know Derek. So this was hard for me to shoot. You know, this was very hard. You know, I kind of hated Anderson afterwards, and I was like, all right, I'll suck it up. That was on Derek to win this fight, but yeah, that was not fun. Some of these fights sometimes they're not easy, especially if I know the guy and they're fighting a away team. I get emotionally invested. Like the photograph of David Branch choking out his guy, like after he won that fight, I was relieved. I was like, God, I don't want to touch this camera until January. Like this shit is stressful. Even watch it gets stressful because I'm not gonna lie, I'm one of these photographers that I get attached to the max. Sometimes I gotta step back and be like, all right, but it helps, you know. So when I see these guys win or lose, like I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I'll jump up and celebrate and curse and like, yeah, fuck that guy, yeah, that's what you did. And when they lose, I'm like, oh shit. All right, let me calm down before I lose my mind. Or like again, going back to women, I think it's been a trend of mine in my short career. I'm often just photographing these women do these amazing things. This was taken in the main event in Barclays, Jermaine Durand fighting Holly Holm for the vacant 145-pound title. And whenever I'm at these fights, I don't just like shooting action. I like seeing how they react to big audiences. And she was pacing around waiting for Holly Holm, you know, like a pit bull. You know, it's like I'm watching her, and I'm like, let me shoot this picture just in case I come back to it, try to remember that night. And she wanted to win the world title. Controversial split. And Brooklyn was mad, by the way. They was not happy about that fight. So this picture was taken, if you know anything about New York, one of the staple street war courts in the city of New York is West 4th Street, also known as the Cage. Often known in the past, guys like Anthony Mason has played in the Cage. This environment, it brings out the best of the worst in you. So in this photo there, this game has been back and forth, although the score reflects otherwise. And man, I was sitting right there, I'm just like, holy shit, is somebody gonna score? And I mean, eventually they started scoring, but like this right here was like it for me. I was like, let me get this. This is one guy running that court. You got everybody else chasing him, either get the ball away from him or to support him. And, this actually wanted to turn into a big fight. He actually was throwing blows after the fouls. And so I'm like, all right, thank God we get some sort of confrontation that we don't see in the league. And often when I'm photographing these athletes, the two worlds collide. So in this situation, this was a dream shoot for me. The UFC initially gave this assignment to another shooter who works with ESPN, and the UFC asked me to shoot UFC fighter Aljamain Sterling in Newark. And I'm like, wait, hold on, time out. Why would I shoot him and Eric B. of Eric B. and Rakim in Newark when hip-hop was originated in the Bronx? I was like, let me photograph him in the Bronx, because if I photograph him in Newark, this is not going to make sense, and I'm gonna get screamed at by everybody. So, and being that Aljamain Sterling is a Rakim fan and a Big Daddy Kane fan, I was like, this would be perfect. He looks like Big Daddy Kane, although that we plan to wear this 80s jumpsuit, but he brought Super Bowl, so I was like, perfect. We'll make it work. And so often my world of sports blends in with music, and I get to live out my childhood a bit and create these portraits. And often I get to build a fine art kind of portraits. And this portrait again that's Jerome Love. The inspiration for this was like, I've been looking at Nike ads all my whole entire life, especially when Jordan was the man, and seeing these commercials and everything. I was like, let me try to put that on. Let me try to create something that be remembered. Should he get in the league or not? Let me create something that he can wear, he can look at, people can remember. And this was actually on the 50th try. I had him jump 50 times doing different things. And this is actually the most sought after print. Everybody, when they look at my work, they're like, can I get a print of that? And I'm like, sheesh, I'm printing more of these things. But, so yeah, my work, if I'm documenting, I'm celebrating, I'm photographing their life, whether it's a fighter going through the hardships of training camp, whether it's basketball players duking it out in the middle of the night at 1 in the morning, or in hot-ass 12 a.m. New York sun, or if I got them in a studio setting and I'm really getting to know them, my work celebrates the athlete, and whatever's the athlete, the performer, and the human being. That's all I got.